Good morning, everybody. Here we are today. Myself, Cale Pearson, Manny Martinez, and Tiffany. And we are here on Top 3 Leadership really to talk about a coaching call for Tiffany. And, we're going to go through what delegation and the focus zone. So really time management, talk about Tiffany's best ideas. And Manny, welcome, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Good to see you.
You too. Tiff, how you doing?
Hanging in here. It's Friday. Woo!
Yeah, yeah, you've had a busy life. So,
Yeah.
Manny, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome to our accountability coaching call session for November. And during the month of November, we covered a couple of really important topics that we can always improve upon as leaders and managers. One is time management, which in our session we call the focus zone. What are some different practices that we can apply to really better prioritize our work and therefore maximize the time that we have to do the things that are most important to us and still have time to do the things that we want to do with the people whom we care the most. And then a little bit later, we looked at the delegation advantage. If we want to maximize our time as leaders and managers, we need to empower our employees through effective delegation. Frees us up to do the things that only belong to us that we cannot delegate to others. And it also allows employees to develop new skills, new abilities. It helps them for their career progression and also improves their competence and confidence in their work. So, some really great things that we talked about. And what I want to do now is I want to share a quick recap of both of those sessions. And then in between each of the focus zone and delegation advantage recaps, I'll ask Tiffany to talk about her best ideas from that session and her action plan idea, because everything that we do at Crestcom, we put together into action plans, because if you're not using what you're learning, it's wasted learning. So I'm going to ask Cale to go ahead and put this slides up for us to review. The focus zone is a different approach for us for time management, because I don't know about you, but if you were to ask just about everybody, they'll tell you they don't have enough time to do the things that they need to get done. And interestingly enough, all our time saving devices that we have these days have robbed us of our leisure time. We cannot add more time into our lives, but we can add more life into our time, says Mark Sanborn. Therefore, how can we look towards ways to better prioritize our work, remove the distractions that keep us and prevent us from doing our best work, and allow us to really enjoy the time that we are having doing those things that are most important? So during the session, we looked at the cost of distractions in the workplace. It's costing us not just time, but money. What are 8 principles of the focus zone? In other words, what are 8 different strategies we can apply to improve our productivity and our timeliness? And then, as leaders, how can we look at our organizations, our departments, our work centers to improve our workplace culture by removing distractions, creating a focus plan? We'll talk about that here very shortly. Now, some of the distractions that we have at work, and we have many of them that rob us of our time, look like people. So we talked about a cast of characters, people like the drop in Debbie, or the hey, you got a minute? Got a minute, Greta? How about the procrastinator Pedro is always late for everything? Or reply all Ricardo? Yes, another email that I don't need to see and be informed on. So we talked about what are some of these characters, who are these people, and how are they distracting us from doing the important work we need to do. And because they're distractions, it can take us up to 23 minutes to refocus when we have a major distraction, like emails, phone calls, that last minute tasker, somebody stopping by with some kind of fire that needs to be put out. And if we have a series of major distractions at work, it can cost us up to 1/3 of our working day. Think about that. You might be spending up to 1/3 of your working day wasting it away in distractions instead of being productive. Does it cost money? It absolutely does. It can cost us up to 13 hours a week in major distractions, which means that a salaried employee that gets $30 an hour over the cost of a year is over 19,000 lost productivity. And we're just referring to salary. What are those additional jobs that you can find or bids you can, win if you weren't distracted, as an example. We had Paul Weston as our featured thought leader for the focus zone. And in a couple of videos that we shared, in one of them, he introduced those 8 focus zone principles. And one of our activities was aligning a cast of character with a focus zone principle. So, for example, how does putting together a sanctuary, a quiet place where we can be removed from distractions, help us keep the drop-in Debbies at bay? Or help drop-in Debbie know not to drop in because we are now in a sanctuary do not disturb moment, like the got a minute Greta do not disturb signal to let Greta know this is not a good time for you got a minute. If we don't have great communication SOPs, is that affecting the way that we communicate via email? And therefore, that's why Ricardo thinks he can just reply to everything. And since we cannot delete the reply all button from his email inbox, we've got to come up with a different solution. So these focus on principles allow us to say, how can we help these cast of characters not become a distraction? But then how can we help ourselves and our people remove ourselves from those distractions? A really great activity. What's cool about these? Very simple things that we can all do. Time allocation, having a sanctuary, clear objectives, things that we can all do and really refine. Another activity we did in class is determining what task we want to accomplish in our work or maybe in our personal lives, why we want to do that, and based on that goal, what are some of the barriers? And then the how was what's a focus on principle that can help us make sure we achieve that goal. Now, I talked about cast of characters a little bit earlier. There was a study done recently, and 70% of employees said their number one distraction in the workplace is their boss. So as leaders, how are we becoming a distraction to our employees, even though we think we're just trying to be kind and helping them out? Sometimes we become that distraction. An activity we did in class was identifying, who am I? How am I distracting people? Am I a drop-in Debbie? Am I a forgetful Frederick? Am I a shiny object Stefan? And what is a focus on principle that I can apply so I can help my employees be more productive and effective and not be a distraction to them? Finally, we did another group activity in our class. We bring different organizations and different managers into a live classroom session. And we looked at 4 leadership key areas: communication, meetings, leadership style, and team collaboration. We determined which one of these is the most critical for us, as in the one that needs the most improvement. Why do we need to improve, say, for example, meetings? Well, it's because our meetings are just taking too long. We're getting nothing accomplished. We don't have an agenda, and people are just spending most of their time spinning their wheels, and we're just talking about stuff that's not really relevant. Why am I here? So depending on which of those leadership areas you identified, why you need to improve it, and then what's a focus zone principle that can help you improve your team meetings or your communications in your department or team collaboration, as an example. All right. So that is our recap of the focus zone. It's a great way for us to approach time management. And I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany. Tiffany, tell us about your action plan idea, your best idea from this session. And Kale, you can go ahead and minimize those slides now. Thank you.
So the best idea that I actually obtained from there was learning the 8 principles of the focus zone and setting clean and clear objectives on what actually needs to be done. Sometimes I get a little boggled because I do get distracted so many different times from so many different people. So sometimes it's hard for me to focus on stuff. So one of the biggest ideas that I had, of course, and I've already spoke with Kale about it, was like trying to get some cubicle partition around my desk to kind of minimize some of the outside chaos that happens, because it's, you know what I mean, with so many people in the office, it's kind of like a bullpen. So there's many people, you know, shouting across the office, hey, you got this load, you got that load, that kind of thing. So that's still needing to be done, but at least I can be kind of in my own little cove by myself and be able to focus on stuff.
Yeah.
And then maybe put it out of office. So I do that quite often sometimes for like my phone, because my phone will start, people will just call, and sometimes they just want to maybe just talk just a little bit. And it's like, if I have to be focused on something, I have to get it done. So I can't be distracted from outside phone calls or people coming by, the drop-in Debbies and all that kind of stuff. So I really try to use my headphones as like a distraction to keep me from hearing everything else. The only bad thing is that I start being a shiny object Stefan because people are moving around me. So I start to like, oh, what's going on out here? And so it's hard for me to focus. And I'm like, please, I just need to get some stuff done. And then the last thing is using my calendar on Outlook as like a task manager. Like I always write down a list of things, but for me to look down and see that, like it's not jumping out at me all the time. So I'm thinking if I use my Outlook calendar for like the different things that I need to get done with the little red flags, that's going to pop up. And the whole shiny object thing, I'm going to see something pop up and be like, what is that? And then I'll be like, oh, that's what I have to do. So that's kind of where I was on that. How I used this idea is by using my noise canceling headphones to block out the distractions. That helps a lot. I still need something to be able to block out the visuals, of course. I do use my out of office a lot, and I've actually been trying to do that more often. So especially here towards the end of the year, I need to be able to get certain things done. And there's actually a time frame that I have to get it done in. And so that's very crucial. So I don't hold anybody else up for whatever they are doing. Otherwise, it disrupts the whole flow.
Yeah. And that's great, because then that informs others that you're not available. So
Right.
if you're not available, then you're not going to be a waste of time to them either.
Right. Exactly.
Because they
And
know,
that's what I
okay,
don't want to do.
yeah, like no wonder Tiffany's not responding, because she's out, for the next 24 hours or something like that. Okay. So
Right.
I'm not going to start calling her and emailing her again and texting her and wasting time and getting distracted. Yes. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Very, very practical tools. I see you created a sanctuary for this call. You're not in.
Yeah, I'm not out there. Kale asked me to be able to just pull myself away from the outside for it to be quiet for us to be able to talk, and that helps.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would be looking around at other things.
Yeah, and what's interesting, these are very simple, practical things, but yet they make a big impact.
They do.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're able to drown out some of the sound, then you can better focus on the work and task at hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How have you found the use of the Outlook? How has that been helpful?
So I just started kind of more so implementing that probably within the last week or so. And it's popping up. Like I always do Christmas gifts each year towards the end of the year. And that's my task. And so to be able to stay on task, I had to put that on there, and it kept reminding me every single day. But like not in the morning time, because that's usually my busiest time, but towards the end of the day when things start to kind of drown down and I have a little bit of time to really focus on that. And it's fun, but then it's not, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people to buy things for. So that's where I kind of got my my Outlook deal. And it's like, hey, do this set amount first, and then you're done with that. And then when you're done, then now you have that off your shoulder. Oh, here's the next thing. And so I had them in two different ones. Once I got done, then it checked it off, and I felt like a sense of accomplishment once I was done.
I love that, which is contrasty. I know I have to get all these cards done by Friday.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday evening, you're doing them all, because I'll get to them, I'll get to them.
That's usually how it was before. But now I'm really trying to, if you break it up into smaller things, it doesn't seem so big and overwhelming. And that was, I don't remember which session that was on, but we did do that where you have to break it down into smaller things. I think it was like last month or month before last, excuse me, where you had to break things down smaller. And so that's another thing that I've been trying to use is don't put it as a big picture, put it as a smaller picture. Oh, and then here's another smaller picture. And then if that looks too big, then you break those two down into two more and see how it works for you there. So that's kind of what I've been doing, just because as of late, especially towards the end of the year here, I've been feeling super overwhelmed. And by doing that and cutting it down smaller, it doesn't feel so overwhelming all the time.
Yeah. Love it. Breaking down to smaller pieces and then just small bits and pieces as you go. And then you get the whole thing accomplished and you're not as overwhelmed. Love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Tiffany. Kale, love to hear your thoughts as we've been talking about the focus zone and removing distractions and using our time a little more wisely.
Yeah. I mean, first thing more on me is like, I've had to learn as we've grown, as the organization's grown, it's like, if I'm going to be out of the office, I need to give people more lead time.
Yeah.
Because there's always something like, oh, the got a minute, Greta. It's like, I forget, it was a week or two ago. It was like, I told everybody, hey, I'm going to be logging off at 10, or kind of like today, after 10 o'clock, I'm going to be logged off and leaving. But a couple weeks ago, it was like, I did the same thing, but I did it with like, my last email was like, hey, I'm logging off for the day. I'll see you Monday type thing. And a couple people, hey, can we chat first? Well, they're never quick chats, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So anyways, we chatted and I'm like, okay, I need to give more notice on that, because if somebody does have something that I need to help them with, I need to give them the time to do it where it doesn't affect what I'm trying to do, personally.
Yeah.
So I did that this morning, and, luckily it was more just replying back like, hey, do you need anything while you're gone? Here's what we're working on. But it also gave us like 3 or 4 hours, for that to not be a rush. And I think that proactive communication is so critical for time management, right? Because we have things that we want to get done on a certain time frame, but there's always going to be interruptions in an organization, whether they're warranted or not. They're going to happen. And so it's trying to minimize the impact so that we don't feel overwhelmed. And this is no surprise to Tiffany. One of the things I always work with her on is like the delegation piece that's going to come next is like, we need to work on delegation. It's not just your responsibility. It's not all on your shoulders. And so if there's things that we can move off, or things that we can adjust, or things that we can just completely remove off, or just temporary help. And because what does happen is when Tiffany's out of the office, it's like, hey, I can't get a hold of Tiffany. I get that. Like, I'm like, yeah, she's off. What do you need? Well, this, that, or that. And I'm like, okay. So that's where it comes back, where her wanting to do a great job and own it. And then, it's like, it's great to have ownership, but we also got to like let her have her time off for her own mental well-being and not interrupt her, because I find myself interrupting her a lot. I don't want to do that. So it's like, help me help you with this stuff, type thing. But it's a great problem to have, because she cares at a level that most people don't. And it's getting her to care enough to care about herself within that process. And I think that's what, leadership is really about. It's like, yeah, I want you to do these things, but I want you to also, do these other things for you and not feel overwhelmed. And, be in a position where when you're off, you're not like just totally exhausted because you're just like, I'm so overwhelmed, right? Because it's easy to do. If you care a lot.
And so, all the time.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we often think that we can manage our time, but we can't manage the distractions. But we can manage the distractions to then allow us to manage our time. I think if we were to look at it from that perspective, it'll be much helpful. Yes, we can minimize the distractions. We can better organize our time, because we know that we can take those distractions and go, are the indications of something else? Like you said, I need to set up time to talk with my team before I'm gone, and setting up good time spots for us to check in, make sure things are going well because I am leaving or I'm going to be doing this or this is going to be happening. And then finally, if you're the only person that can do the job and nobody else can, you're a single point of failure.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be in any situation, which is why effective delegation is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about here very shortly. I'm going to get this one slide up and running. Here we go. Kale, if you go ahead and share the screen, we're going to talk about how we as leaders can multiply our impact through effective delegation. When you think about the organization that you are in today, could it be the organization it is now without effective delegation, without the effective empowerment of the people who are doing the job? Because if it's just you doing everything, you can just fire everybody. But you need a team. And part of the success of the team is effective delegation. Now, delegation is about empowering and authorizing another person to do a task, a project, or a function. Now, you as the delegator remain ultimately accountable for the outcome of that task. Yet, through that process, the person or the team you're delegating the task to, they're developing new skills, they're gaining new knowledge, and that is extremely valuable because now they're becoming more competent, more confident, and more accountable in their work as well. So during this session, we described how delegation adds value to you and adds value to the team, to the organization. We also took time to consider there are barriers to effective delegation and things that hold us back from empowering others to do certain jobs and tasks. And to help us remove those barriers, we reviewed a 5-step delegation process, a roadmap that we can always follow when we're preparing to delegate a task, whether it's delegating to an employee, whether it's delegating to a peer, whether it's delegating up to a superior. This 5-step delegation process can help you do that successfully. Now, at the beginning of class, you might remember I asked all of our managers and leaders in class to consider what's something that you want to delegate. In other words, if there is going to be a moment where you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, maybe a long leave of absence because of a health issue, or you're caring for an elderly parent, or you're just going to be gone for a very long time, and there's a task that has to be done while you're gone, it can't be left behind. What is that task and who you would delegate it to? And having that concept in our mind identified, we could then build the delegation process during this class. We also asked, why haven't you delegated it already? And people answered with things like, well, they don't have time to delegate. Maybe the task is too important. How about I enjoy the task? And in one of our videos, Marilyn Sherman talked about that if a person can do the task at 70% quality, consider the task delegated. And I asked people, is anyone uncomfortable with that 70% statistic? And just about everybody in class raised their hands. We're under the impression that until they can do a task at 100%, I'm not going to empower them and delegate this task to them. They don't have to have it 100% done right. You can delegate that task at 70% quality, and then through the delegation roadmap I'm going to share in the next couple of slides, you can see where that's possible. Free yourself up, because we always think it's got to be delegated at 100%. In other words, they have to be able to do it my way for them to do it effectively. We know that's not necessarily the case. Now, we know there are benefits and value to delegating a task. It helps other people develop skills, abilities. It sets them up for greater career progression. It helps organizations be more productive, effective, create synergy. It frees you up to do the things only you can do. It relieves a lot of stress because you're not as burdened with different things that you need to get accomplished. And of course, it builds trust between an employee and a supervisor when you're entrusting them to do things and they do it well. We featured Marilyn Sherman as our CRESCOM thought leader for this session on delegation, and she explained to us the 5 steps of delegation model. First, identify what is that task, and identify who you're going to assign that task to. Prepare means what are the different objectives we want to accomplish through this task. What does the end goal look like? What are the milestones that we need to attain? When are we going to check in to make sure the task is going successfully? What is the level of authority that I'm going to grant that person or that team so that they have to make decisions about that project or task? What's that level of authority that they have? The delegate step number 3, is when we have that conversation, when we have that phone call, or we sit in front of that person and say, here's the task I'm assigning to you, explain it, work together on those details like the deadlines and when the check-ins are going to be. The monitor and support, here's where that 70% comes in. Since I'm monitoring and supporting your progress, I can help you stay within the parameters of things and correct something that might be getting off course, or give you the feedback to know you're on the right path, you're doing this really well. We just don't want to just fire and forget. We're not dumping off of a task when we delegate. We are empowering another person to do it well. So we have to monitor and support. Evaluate results, step number 5. That's the post-mortem, the after actions report. The once that task has been accomplished and completed, we close the loop. What did we do well? What didn't go well? What have we learned from this experience that when it happens again next time, we can do a better effort? Or what's the next step? Really important for us to evaluate the results. This is part of that continuous feedback loop to make sure that people know that they're doing tasks effectively, and then we've empowered them to do it well. Very often that handoff, when we hand off a task to someone else, we don't do it effectively, and then they struggle. And when they fail, then there's people start pointing fingers, and it erodes trust, and then now suddenly, well, maybe I'm not going to give another task to someone else anymore. It causes problems. Having an effective delegation roadmap can help us remove ineffective handoffs and sets up your people for success. And as a leader, you want your people to be successful, because when they succeed, you succeed. Mm-hmm. And that's our recap of Delegation Advantage. Tiffany, let me have you take over the controls of the microphone and talk about your best idea, your action plan idea. Over to you, please.
Okay, so the best idea that I obtained was learning that 5-step delegation process, because as we spoke about earlier, I have a problem with doing that. And some of it has to do, I think, with, of course, me wanting to do a good job and just show that, yes, I can do it. That's number 1. But then the second thing is that I'm very detail oriented. Probably I'm going to say about 98% of the time. And I really enjoy tasks like that. So that's probably some of the hardest stuff. Like, please don't I feel like it's being taken away from me, but it's not. It's more so of like, let somebody else help with this. And I'm like, okay, fine. So that's my biggest thing with delegation. So this one actually kind of hit home. It hit the feels for me. So one of the action plans that I did was identifying which tasks that I can actually delegate to certain individuals when I'm gone, or just in general. Preparing the tasks that are delegated to certain individuals by breaking down the projects for myself, and then for the person that it's actually delegated to, and then actually delegating the task and deploying it fully to somebody. So, for example, I do agent commissions. And when I do that, I've been doing that now for the past 3 years that I've been here. And I really enjoyed the process. Sometimes does it get a little annoying, because it's like there's a lot of them to do. So it's very detail oriented. Some are a little more special than the other ones, I guess you would say. So it takes a little bit more time, but I like that kind of stuff. So when I started to get a little overwhelmed, they asked Brielle. Shout out to Brielle. She's great. She's wonderful. And she's so smart. So she took over doing some of the commissions, especially like when I'm not here or I'm not able to do them. And she helps out getting them set up for me to finalize them on Wednesdays. So that frees up a lot of my time. So during the delegation process, I actually did break this down. This was actually way before I even did this session. And what I did was broke it down, and her and I got together and I said, hey, this is how I do, these certain ones. So I gave some of the easier ones that don't really ever change. They're just pretty much the same thing all each week. And so I went over that with her, and I was able to kind of let her be on her own. After she did that, she totally understood the project and was able to get the information down and actually execute the entire process. Then I just checked over it once she was done with it. And then over, I think it was like a month or two process, we went over it each time, and she said, let me know if there's anything that is out of place or doesn't look like I did it correctly or something like that. And there was little minor things here and there. And that's why I was there to go over stuff. Hey, this one doesn't look right. Looks like this is what happened. Let's get in here together and let's go over what we need to do to make this right. And so by the end of the time, I think it was like a month, because she's just super quick, super sharp, and super smart. And she got it done. And now, when I was gone, when I was moving back here to Oregon, it was really, really nice to be able to take a deep breath and know that it's still going to be taken care of. Yeah. And I don't have to fret about it thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's not going to get it done. It's not going to get sent out to the agents. They're going to be upset because that's their livelihood. And we want to make sure that we take care of our agents. And so that's just been my task. And I always want to make sure that they're taken care of. And now I can count on Brielle to take that over. And I know that she's got it. There's no problems involved. So that just, at the end of the day for me, delegating that process to her took that off my my plate to an extent. I still like to dabble in it pretty much every week, but she still helps out and makes it easier for me. So that's kind of what I, like I said, I still have problems with delegating, but I'm working on it. It's a process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love that. You saw where the person started doing the task, and then you coached the person in the little areas that needed some refinement. And now it's, she runs with it. You're not losing any sleep. It's taken care of. And that if something doesn't get 100% the way it should be, she knows how to resolve it too. So this is fabulous. Yes. And it is hard for us sometimes just to relinquish that task, because we want to be in control. We want to do it exactly the way we've always done it. If it comes, that's my baby, that's but we got to be thinking about how do we better empower our people and set them up for success. And then we can then free ourselves up to do other things. Right. Because there's never going to be a shortage of work.
And on that note, with empowering, she had been doing her certain responsibilities for a while, and to be able to give her something new to do, that helped her feel like, okay, well, now I'm actually branching my wings out. I'm not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now I have this incorporated on my Tuesdays and Wednesdays and that kind of deal. So now it's something a little bit different if she's not pulled in a different direction to help in that department or something. So that made me feel good. And I'm like, okay, Tiff, it's not all about you. Okay. You have to think that in your mind. It's not all about you, bud. So get it together and let other people help. Not just helping, but let them feel good about what they're doing too. Because if they feel good like I do when I get something accomplished or people are happy with me, then I'm going to be happy that they're happy.
Yeah, I love that. The ability to stretch and grow so they don't feel like they're being, like they're stagnating in their job.
Right, exactly.
And if they feel like they're stagnating and there's no place to go, they're going to go out the door.
Right. The silent quit. And you don't want that kind of stuff to happen, because they're really good people and they're smart and they're quick and just, they retain a lot of knowledge and they know how to do those things. So you definitely don't want those. And not to say that she was going to, but just saying in general, she has something different to do and work on when she can. Yeah. And that's a good thing.
That's great. Expanding her toolkit. Love it.
Yep.
Thank you, Tiffany. Kale, let's hear from you.
Certainly. Delegation is one of those things that it's a daily process. It's balancing, like you talked about, Tiffany, like our own satisfaction of doing a good job and feeling like we're contributing to the team, and then balancing it with empowering others. And I dropped in the comments that delegation is a superpower for great leaders, and it really is, because the one thing we can't make more of is time. And often, people think that they have to do it all, they have to touch it all, and that's just not the case. I mean, we can't. It doesn't matter how wealthy we are or how many things we do, we still only have the same amount of time as anybody else. And figuring out how to use that time wisely, personally, professionally, and across the organization is critical. And I always look at it as I really want to help people maximize their growth, and sometimes it's pushing them into what I call the positive pressure. It's like applying enough pressure that they know, we're trying to help, we're trying to make it better for you. And sometimes in the moment we can't see it because we're just head down on the task, or we really like it, and it's somebody reframing the situation. I know we have some modules on that. Let's reframe the situation. Let's look at it from this view, and how does that change your perspective? I know we do it on the photos, right? You zoom in or you zoom out type thing. And it's just important to, really, sometimes take that step back and look at, okay, I get my satisfaction from these things, but how do others get their satisfaction from the job? And how can I help that? How can we make it work for everybody? And it's a balancing act. Sometimes there's that push and pull on it, and but the overarching thing is having the environment where we're going to push and we're going to grow. And if we stumble, that's going to be okay. We're just going to reset and then continue to move forward. And anytime an organization's growing, you're going to have those little pain points that just constantly come up. And to me, I cherish those, because that means we are growing. It means that we are trying to move forward, and there are opportunities for us to improve at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, next week we're going to be looking at our December CRESCOM sessions, and we'll spend some time on Tuesday with the session that relates to conflict. So it's the conflict mindset, being able to encourage healthy conflict in the workplace, when we can have great discussions and the back and forth that leads us to win-win outcomes, and remove the unhealthy conflict that's destructive. That's the kind of stuff that we all don't want to talk about, but yet we know when we see it how awful it is and how it damages organizations and the ability to build positive relationships with ourselves, with the clients, and that we serve, and so on. A little bit later in the week, we will look at team fusion. How do we harness the skills and the strengths and the abilities of everyone on our team to create synergy and develop the maximum brilliance of an organization? That's going to be team fusion. Looking at things like, what are our goals as a team? What are our team norms? What sets us apart? What are those norms that really shape our culture? And as well as, what is the process that we have to onboard employees effectively so they are quickly part of the team and they feel like they've always been here. And I'm just part of this big group. It's like, I've always been here. That's what it feels like. And then as well as developing actions to create an environment where our employees choose to act, where they motivate themselves, because we want employees who are motivated and they want to come to work to do a great job every single day. How do we create that environment where people choose to act? Some great sessions coming up next week, all wonderful things that challenge us as leaders and as managers. But again, we don't have to remain stuck in the challenge. We can find solutions to overcome them. And that's what we do in CRESCOM every single month, and give you practical skills to develop those solutions. Tiffany, good work. I love the practical ways and frameworks you use, what you learned in class this past month. Very well done.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And Kale, it's always great to have you here. Your insights as a leadership and Crestcom colleague always really are on point. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right.
Okay, we'll see everybody later.
All right.
right.
Thanks, guys.